All right.
All right, this is my capstone podcast project with my mentor. I'll let him introduce himself right here.
Hello, my name is Reginald Williamson. I am currently the athletic director at Columbus Independence High School.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions, kind of pick your brain about being an athletic director. Um, so first of all, uh, what role did what role do high school sports like play in shaping a student's overall development, whether it's athletically or academically, and just personally in general?
I think athletics plays a role in helping shape and mold a well-rounded individual
Right.
uh, and giving a student an ultimate positive high school experience. I personally look at athletics as an extension of the classroom
Mhm.
academically, and it helps tie in, things like perseverance and grit
Right.
and management and things like that. That I think that will benefit, students inside the classroom.
Okay. Um, so I wanted to see, how do you think the landscape of high school athletics has evolved over the years? Like since you've been an athletic director, how do you think it's evolved over the years?
Um, Athletics continues to evolve, um, year after year. For example, the new landscape now we have. Pretty sure you've seen like the NIL deals and things like
Yeah.
that are available to high school students,
Yeah.
which previously was not made available. So that's one of the key components. You have things like transfer portals, and
Mhm.
it's becoming more of a business-like model.
Right.
Uh, in addition to just the interscholastic competition. Um, so it's definitely changed dramatically, especially since I was a student athlete.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think evolution is a good thing. They're
Right.
they're coming up with different ways that athletics can benefit the student athlete, and to keep moving.
Okay. So when it comes to that with the NIL era and all that, do you feel like that would like what trends do you see in the future? Like, do you think that NIL could make an entrance into the high school scene or
I think eventually it will. I know it has been up. I'm gonna speak specifically about Ohio High School
okay.
interscholastic athletics. It was up for voting within the last year or so, whether or
Mhm.
not Ohio would admit that, the availability of NIL deals for student athletes in Ohio. It did not pass on the last
Mhm.
referendum voting through OSHA. But I think once, we get a better, when I say we, I just mean society in general, gives a
Mhm.
better idea of what the infrastructure of NIL will look like and
Mhm.
get a better handle on how to handle it, at the high school level. I think eventually it'll make its way through the doors. Um, I think it's just a lot to remains to be seen with that right now.
Okay. So with the NIL, do you think that will positively or negatively impact like high school sports as a whole?
I wish I had an answer for that. I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know. I'm going to say right now positively, because
Mhm.
it's something that I think will benefit the student athlete.
Right.
Uh, and I am, uh, student athlete focus. So anything that will benefit students and student athletes, I'm all
Mhm.
for.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So my next question is, can you share any strategies that like employed by your school to ensure like inclusivity and equal opportunities for students in all sports? Because I know that's a big that's a big talking point in sports nowadays.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, like strategies to include all
Right.
like so the student body. Yeah, there's the number one strategy in my opinion is just to create more opportunities.
Mm.
Um, the more athletic opportunities we have to offer, I think it's the more opportunities there is for everybody to be involved. You
Okay.
know, everything from um, you have boys soccer in the fall, and you can offer a girls soccer program in the fall, or
Right.
now we have co-ed cheerleading.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I know a lot of times, people look at it as just that's a female-based program, but it's not. So changing
Mm-hmm.
the trajectory with that and including more individuals into that aspect. Just creating different programs and more programs for those to be involved with athletics. And even I've even seen programs now started to include gaming,
Okay.
e-gaming as a potential opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And 'cause everybody doesn't want to be involved with athletics, but there's
Right.
something for everybody to be involved in.
Okay. So you mentioned like adding new like sporting teams and stuff like that. How would you go about that? Like, what's the process for that?
The process for that is first discussing that with your administration,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure we have the resources available to even offer to put more on our plate, so to speak, because it is an
Right.
additional responsibility that affects not only the athletic department but the entire school building.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking with the administration and the powers that be to make sure we can add more to our plate like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then the second part with the next most important part is to find a head coach that will be suitable for that program. And
Right.
then once you get those two things into play, you start planning out, what the season will look like, scheduling, and then also the recruiting of student athletes within the building that
Mhm.
are interested in that sport.
Okay. So obviously being a student athlete, the student comes first, but some students, some athletes do struggle with that. So I know that balancing academics and athletics can be challenging for high school students. Is there like a support system in your school to help them manage their time effectively?
Definitely, definitely. I like to use the verbiage of keeping a pulse of the students,
Okay.
and that's something that I use with a lot of head coaches. Keeping a gauge on the pulse of your team.
Right.
Uh, and just touching base if something seems kind of out of sync or out of whack. Coaches and I will talk about it, and then we will speak with that student and their family, and then refer them to the resources that we have available, whether
Right.
it's, counseling or working with our social worker and things like that.
Mm,
Uh, the most common that we've been seeing here since post pandemic has been, just for example, students becoming more overwhelmed with trying to balance everything
mm,
and the stress and anxiety that comes along with it. And
right.
what we found, just as an example, is just it kind of boils down to time management. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't know if you've had seen this experience or even experienced it yourself as a student athlete, but a lot of student athletes do work as well. So now they're balancing, school, then athletics, and then employment.
Right. Right.
Sometimes they feel like there's not enough time in a day. And so, one of the resources we do is, we actually sit down and we carve out, not, excuse me, not carve out, but we map out their daily schedule, of what this looks like,
Mm,
um, most importantly, focusing on the academic side of it. And
right.
then how do they balance the extracurriculars, and
Okay.
what takes priority from there. So does that kind of answer your question? Did
Yeah.
that application? Okay.
Yep. Um, my next question. So, in what ways do you feel like high school sports contribute to a school's like sense of community and pride? Because honestly, I haven't. I mean, I've had a little bit of that experience playing for Independence, but at the same time, I don't go to the school, so I don't really know like the total effect it has. And because my school doesn't have sports, I've never really got like a firsthand experience at something like that in high school.
So you're speaking to like the traditional experience of, being enrolled
Right.
in a particular school and also participating. I mean, it's every community is different,
Hmm.
every school is different. But I will say athletics, in my opinion, play a huge part in tying in the community
Hmm.
along with the actual school.
Right.
It brings a lot of people together. It gives a sense of community pride.
Hmm.
Um, I, as an athletic director, have actually encountered spectators coming to baseball games or volleyball games or football games, basketball games, and they don't necessarily have students there that they're actually cheering for. They're just actually members of the community and want to come out and support the school.
Right.
So to me, that's kind of evident of how athletics can kind of impact the community as well. And then it also fosters relationships within the community to kind of help support and offer their resources to the school as well.
Right. Okay. Um, so my next question is, can you discuss the importance of sportsmanship and character development within your program?
It's very important, actually the
Right.
most important.
Yeah.
Uh, Sportsmanship um, sometimes can get lost in the competitive nature,
Right.
but I think as uh, the adults and the coaches and the leaders of you all as student athletes, I think that's something that we always have to remember to put first. Uh,
Mm,
when you put on a uniform, um, you're representing so many aspects of it. You're representing your school, your community, your school district, and I even take it further as outside of representing just yourself as a student athlete, you're also representing your family as well.
right.
Uh, so a lot of people are looking at with your sportsmanship. That's how they gauge. Sometimes who you are as a character,
Hmm.
what your character is like. So, maintaining sportsmanship and integrity is huge.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't believe in cheating the game in whichever sport that may be. I just always had a fundamental principle of if you're good to the game will be good to you.
Okay. So obviously safety is a huge like concern in high school sports and just sports in general. So how does your school address the issue of safety and injury prevention in high school sports? Because obviously like there's only so much you can do when it comes to like injury prevention and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But can you just, you know,
So you want me to speak directly to like injury prevention or that
just like
aspect?
sa safety and injury prevention during like high school sports, stuff
Okay.
like
So I'll speak on the safety aspect of it from a crowd control perspective.
that. Okay.
So we have a team of safety and security officers that staff each of our events.
Mm,
We meet with our safety and security supervisor prior to our athletic events, so we
mm,
can go over. We have plan of actions in place, like if there's inclement weather, like for football, if there's thunder and lightning or a bad storm, we have a plan of action of where we store the teams and the band members and things like that, so everybody is safe out of weather, out of harm's way.
right.
Um, if there's an actual injury on the field where, let's say, EMS needs to be called, we have a
Mm,
separate protocol that we go through. So I'm gonna speak to football, for example, because
okay.
it's such a huge event.
Right.
So for football, when it comes to injuries, we have, first of all, we have an athletic trainer on site. We have two athletic trainers on site for football games, and also a team physician, a team
Okay.
doctor. And
Okay.
all of these individuals are subcontracted through OSU, Ohio State University.
Okay.
And our plan of action is this: if a student unfortunately goes down with a catastrophic injury on the field, we
Mm,
have a designated plan of action on who does what.
right.
There is a um, there is an individual person that's identified prior to even game day on if 911 needs to be called, you call 911. There's
Mm,
a person who is responsible for getting the AED if someone needs that treatment on the
right.
field. There's another person who is in charge of you have to open the gate when that EMS arrives to get them onto the field if someone needs to be carted off. So there's a detailed plan of action that we go through, and we always meet, and it gets repetitive in nature, but we can't never take it for granted. And we
Right.
always meet prior to the games to make sure everyone knows what their specific responsibility is. So that way, if something does happen, we can react quickly because in a time of injury, time is of the essence.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the rise of club sports and specialization, how do you maintain the importance of representing a school, like in sports, like when we're going to away games, for example, or team events, stuff like that?
Can you repeat that again?
So, like obviously with the rise of club sports and specialization, like how do you maintain the importance of representing a school when it comes to sports?
Um, I think branding plays
Mm,
a major role with that. You know, you always want to make sure that you're representing your school in a positive manner,
mm,
meaning in a consistent manner. Let me say consistent as opposed to positive. You don't want to have multiple teams within your building having multiple different logos,
right.
for example. So like when you think about OSU, like I have an OSU shirt on today,
Mm,
everybody uses the block O within
right.
Ohio State. When you see that block O, it's Ohio State. So um, we have our logo here with the I. So
Mm,
I think it's very important for that to be reflected upon, uniforms, travel wear, t-shirts, things like that.
mm,
Um, I've seen where schools have multiple different logos, like this team has their own specific logo, or that team has their own specific logo, and I think it's really necessary to kind of be consistent in that
right.
area.
Right. Okay. Yeah, branding is a big one because a lot of times I wear my independence jacket. A lot of people, they like representing independent. They're like, I like this representing independence, things like that. So,
Mhm. Yeah, you'll see like I don't know if you've ever experienced this, especially being a basketball player of mine, but
uh,
you wearing like your independence gear, somebody will know, oh, you're playing basketball in the Columbus City League, and someone will probably want to talk to you about players from 10, 15, 20 years ago,
yeah,
things like that. So
I've had
uh
that experience at a showcase. I was wearing my independence jacket. I was at the concession stand and George Reese had came up. He's like, "Oh, you play basketball for Independence and you need to buying me my concessions." So,
okay, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what advice would you give to student athletes aspiring to pursue a collegiate career or a professional sports career?
The first piece of advice I would give them would be, and I think you've heard this spiel from me, as being a participant in independence athletics, is there's only two things you can control, which is your effort and your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can control how hard you work. You can control your investment of time and preparation.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's in everything as far as practice, your nutrition, and all that good stuff. And then your attitude is how controlling how you react to adversity.
Okay.
When things aren't going your way, are you still disciplined enough to still put the time and the work in and
Right.
press and persevere through and still do things the correct way in a positive way? Um, yeah, that would be my piece of advice to individuals looking to pursue athletics.
Okay. And then how do you foster a positive relationship between coaches, athletes, parents, and the community to ensure the success of your athletic programs?
Constant communication.
Mm,
Um, Constant communication, constant publicizing of the athletic department
mm,
by any means. If it's sending out, mass emails or um, now the most effective way is teams using social media.
right.
Uh, so utilizing social media is a great way to kind of bridge that gap between the community and the school as well, so they can kind of have a good sense of what's going on.
Right.
Taking it a step further, always having open communication with the student athletes' parents. If there's
Mm,
changes in game schedule, um, or if there are like some specific one-off concerns or anything like that.
right.
If a particular student athlete is having some issues in school and we kind of see like a reoccurring trend, typically we'll invite that parent in, just like, hey, what can we do to best support, your student? They seem to be having some challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
all we do is see them succeed. So, always having that door open um, is a great way for us to foster those relationships
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, always being, a helping hand.
Yeah. Okay. For my next question, um, lately, like over the recent years, mental health has been coming out more of a forefront for
Mhm.
sports. So does the athletic director, how does the athletic department prioritize mental health and well-being among your student athletes, coaches, and even staff or coaches, staff? Um, and if you have any, can you share any like specific initiatives or resources that are offered?
Yeah, one thing that we've done, especially as a school district, is we started requiring all of our coaches to have a mental health training certificate. And
Mm,
in that mental health training, first, it's a requirement for you to be a coach within our school district.
okay.
So we'll start there. And that way, amongst several other certifications, but that's huge. So they know the signs to look for, when a student athlete is feeling overwhelmed or anxious or maybe looking depressed and or things like that, because not a lot of times students aren't just going to be forthcoming with that information,
Mm,
so um, we have started requiring our all of our head coaches as well as assistant coaches to receive that training across the board in every sport, um, so they can be aware of signs and symptoms to look for.
okay. Um, Let me see. So with advancement in technology, has the role of data or analytics, or how's the role of data or analytics evolved in high school sports programs, and specifically your program?
I'm pretty sure you've seen the resource we have, the Huddle camera that
Yep.
records all of our athletic events.
Yep.
So part of our package with Huddle, in addition to and recording the games gives us an opportunity or gives coaches the opportunity to review film and to take specific statistics throughout the film. How
Mhm.
many rebounds you get, how many assists, and things like that.
Yep.
Um, an additional resource that we have for that as well is we're able to send off our Huddle film to the Huddle company, and
Mhm.
they'll do a statistical breakdown for us as well. That way we can compare notes to see how accurate we are to make sure we didn't miss anything. It breaks down, shot charts and things like that, so you can be more
Mhm.
effective coaching your team, and things like that. And then also, um, on my side, when you start talking about data and analytics and things like
Mhm.
that, that's more on the athletic side. But on my side, I keep a constant gauge on athletic programs, their GPAs, the students' attendance.
Mhm.
Are these students being effective academically or efficient academically? Are they involved in the sport? Or, did they get involved with this sport and did we see an upward trend or a downward trend
Mhm.
uh, in their academic progress? So those are some of the things that I look at and start talking about strategies with coaches on how to better impact their students. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so obviously hiring coaches is like a big part of your job.
Mhm.
Um, could you discuss like the process of recruiting and retaining talented coaches for your athletic programs? Because I know that,
Absolutely.
bringing them in is one thing, but obviously as they get better and better, they're gonna have more lucrative opportunities elsewhere. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So and I'll just speak to my personal experience. I've
mm,
been pretty fortunate to have worked with a lot of veteran coaches
mhm,
who've been coaching within in our district a long time. And I've also had the opportunity to bring in new coaches as well. The one constant that we have is we're always remaining in communication. And then we also have off-season meetings, postseason meetings, So in those postseason meetings, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, to
right.
put it and put it in perspective. And sometimes it doesn't always deal with what's happening on the field or on the court. It's what's happening with your student athletes in the classroom, or in the hallway, or how can we develop some strategies to utilize your program to further and positively influence the building. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, we discuss all of that in our postseason reviews, like, hey, what went good, what didn't go good, and what can we do collectively to have a bigger impact or a bigger splash for the next school year.
Okay.
Mhm.
So high school sports can serve as a pathway to higher education through athletic scholarships.
Mhm.
Um, and from my experience, I know a lot of people who that's kind of like their only way to college, and that's
Mhm.
maybe the only way they can pay through college. So how does your school support student athletes in pursuing like collegiate opportunities?
So we it's a team of individuals, not only with the
Mhm.
coaches, with the athletic directors, the counselors get involved, and then also our career advising manager that we
Mhm.
have here through I Know I Can.
Mhm.
We all work together to help our student athletes. For example, we had a senior last year that ran track,
Mhm.
and he was very talented. And he signed to go off to a Division I school in the MAC conference, the Mid American Conference.
Mhm.
So we all played a part in making sure that he was good to go, as far as being registered on the eligibility center through the
Mhm.
NCAA. Um, our counselors worked with him to get his transcripts uploaded to the
Mhm.
NCAA so he can be eligible for his freshman year. The I Know I Can counselor, the career advising manager, excuse me, worked with him to make sure that he had, um, his application to that school that he was signing to in,
Mhm.
helped him with his housing and things like that. And then
Okay.
when it came to me, we just talked, athletic department, and with the coaches, we just helped walk him through his recruiting process. So
Okay.
it's a total team effort
Yeah.
when that opportunity presents itself.
Okay. Um,
Oh, and one additional thing, we also have the NCAA workshops that we call within the schools,
mhm.
uh, where all student athletes can sign up, and we talk to them about what it takes to be eligible to pursue collegiate athletics.
Mhm.
Uh, Now we call it, NCAA eligibility workshop, but we cover not only NCAA athletics, Division I, II, and III, but going to an NAIA school,
Right.
or going the junior college route. We
Mhm.
cover all of those opportunities, so student athletes know, hey, this is what I have to do if I want to pursue athletics at the next level. This is um, what I have to accomplish academically to be able to do so.
Okay. Um, could you share any memorable success stories or achievements from your school's athletic program, um, that may highlight like the impact of sports on students' lives?
Definitely, definitely. Most recently, and I'm gonna date back to last school year, our baseball program won its first divisional championship in school history,
Mhm.
uh, which that was huge. You're aware that we play in the Columbus City League, and it's split between the North Division schools and the South Division schools.
Mhm.
And Independence being a South Division school, our baseball team won the South Division outright and got a berth into to play in their first ever Columbus City League championship game. Now we were runner-ups last year, but the
Mhm.
fact that they won the first South Division championship, and with baseball and school history, that was a huge that was a huge moment right there for Independence athletics.
Right. Okay. Um, so this is kind of like a throwback question because this happened during my freshman year. But the COVID-19 pandemic,
Mhm.
um, it brought a lot of unique challenges to high school sports, obviously.
Mhm.
How did your school at the time adapt to these challenges? And what do you have any takeaways or lessons that you learned from navigating through?
Um, I tell you, we didn't take it very well. The school I was at when that happened, it was very, very difficult. Not only for the school I was at, but just watching all of our counterparts go through. Um, we experienced, it was a very sad time.
Mm,
Um, and I say that because there were some student athletes, and I won't put the name or the school out there in particular, but for example, um, I think the shutdown happened. I think it was like either late February or early March
mm,
uh, of that, and it shut down like the tail end, like the championship season of basketball and winter and wrestling. I'm sorry, I think it shut down the championships of the winter sports season, and there were several teams that I know for a fact that in Columbus City schools that qualified for regional or state tournament competition,
mm.
and that was taken away from them due to the pandemic.
Right.
Um, and reaching those platforms of playing in a regional tournament or a state tournament as a student athlete, those are once in a lifetime experiences, and they're not guaranteed to come around a second time. So um, that's why it was sad to me and disappointing. The takeaways, I mean, man, it was just tough. The main thing that I recall that we were just focused on just keeping everybody engaged, even
Mm,
though we couldn't get together. We couldn't hold practices. We couldn't work out or anything like that. A lot of camaraderie was lost. So we just encouraged our coaches, like, hey, do Zoom calls, do Zoom
yeah.
meetings, keep checking in with your kids. Just ask how they're doing, things like that. Talk about, what you're binge watching on TV, anything other than athletics, because it was a very stressful time. It was a very stressful and disappointing time. Um, this is your freshman year, correct? That
Yeah.
went shut down. Do you recall how you felt throughout that time?
Honestly, me being a freshman, I'm like, you know, us not having to go to school, I was a little excited about that. But um, as the time kept passing, I realized I was bored. I didn't have nothing else. I didn't really have nothing to do. And I
Hmm.
realized that, outside of school, I really was only doing basketball. And when I was taken away, it was like I was in the house stuck, bored,
Yeah,
not doing
yeah.
anything.
And I know personally, now taking my AD hat off and putting my dad hat on, my daughters, you would think that, and I'm gonna use it as an example because everybody is different as far as when it comes to classroom structure and things like that, and that's just my opinion. But my daughters struggle big time, persevering academically, just
Right.
being at home, just sitting at a table, just doing work. It was just like they were so miserable because they're used to being social. They wanted to be with their friends and things like that. It was
Right.
just a very sad, depressing time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one more question for you.
Okay.
Looking ahead, what are your goals or aspirations for like the future of your school's athletic programs?
Um, Future goals and aspirations is, um, growth of all of our all of our athletic programs.
Mm,
Uh, and what I mean by growth is more participants in every sport across the board.
mm,
Uh, I want to be able to offer every um, athletic opportunity possible,
right.
even though it's not, you may not get everything on their offer, but that's a goal of mine to be
Mm,
able to implement and start new programs, so that way more kids have an opportunity to be engaged. Um, that's my overall goal is for more students to be engaged with athletics, and then last on our list would be just become more competitive in
yeah.
all of our sports across the board. I think everybody wants to win, but winning's not the most important thing in interscholastic athletics.
Mm. Um, well, that's all I have for you. Thank
Okay,
you for taking the time to do this with me.
no
Um,
problem.
Thank you for all the time that you've helped me with my capstone project.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed the experience.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm glad I could be a helping hand, and um it felt good giving someone a behind the scenes kind of look, because everybody always just sees, what happens during game time. They don't really get a chance to see
Right,
like the preparation and what goes into it and everything. So I appreciate
right.
you, Amar. You did a great job,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's all we got. Um, okay.